flood paganism, and we're going to try to finish that tonight, but as far as the pre-flood part of it. And then we'll go on into what is being carried over to today's. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to lay a foundation for Genesis chapter 11. Because if we can get through this part, then you'll understand what's going on at Genesis 11 and what's being brought back after the flood. And so, we covered last week the 13 points of Satan's great lie. We covered the first one, which was individual idols. The Bible calls it teraphim there in the book of Judges. And so the teraphim were ancestral idols, and those are the ones that Rachel stole from Laban, was the ancestor idols. And so we went into a lot of that, and it was interesting how in Egypt, when the death angel came over the Egyptians, that the book of Jasher had an excerpt there that their culture, they would put the firstborn in the walls of their houses. And according to the book of Jasher, that when the death angel went over the land of Egypt, killing the firstborn, it also pulled all the bones and stuff out of the walls of the houses that were in there. So, I mean, you talk about losing your mind. I mean, that would be scary. But that's ancestor. And really, if you think about it, in our today's age, there's a lot of ancestral worship. There's a lot of it. I mean, right down to the Native Americans and Buddhists or Hinduism, all those are, a lot of it is ancestor worship. And where they have held their ancestors up as gods and goddesses. Yes, sir. And so, now the second point of Satan's great lie is to evolve into a god. It's evolution to evolve and get to the place where you can become a god. And of course that was Satan's lie in Genesis chapter 3, is trying to tempt Eve. And he said that she would become just like God, knowing good and evil. You could become as gods, knowing good and evil. And that's Genesis chapter 3, verse 5. And so, in the pre-flood paganism, Satan told people that they could become gods themselves. And so, first century magicians thought that after death, they would become demons or helper spirits like elves or angels. Now, later on, we'll get into these things. What are the fairies and the elves and stuff like that? But what they are demons. And so, and it all has its roots here in paganism. And so, Church Father Tertullian mentions this actually, that people believed after death they were supposed to become a god. And he says in his treatise on the soul, he says, and I quote, "In this way, even by magic, which is indeed only a second idolatry, wherein they pretend that after death they become demons, just as they are supposed in the first and literal idolatry to become gods." So in order to evolve to become a god, there has to be a certain idolatry to get you to worship me, you know. And so if I'm going to become a god, I've got to have some followers, you know, right? And so anyway, so to evolve into a god. Number 3, the original creator God no longer exists. And remember, we kind of talked about that last week, that God put a little bit of himself in his creation, and now he no longer exists because he's in all these things that he created. All right, which is not true by any means. And so the original creative force, or God, emptied himself into creation, no longer existed. And so that last time we learned that this was Lucifer's original lie. Now let me read you an excerpt out of Jasher here, because there's an interesting thing. And it says, "And they called to Noah, saying, Open for us, that we may come to thee in the ark. And wherefore shall we die? And Noah with a loud voice answered them from the ark, saying, Have you not all rebelled against the Lord, and said that he does not exist?" See, they didn't believe he existed. "Therefore the Lord brought upon you this evil to destroy and cut you off from the face of the earth. Is not this the thing that I spoke to you of 120 years back? And you would not hearken to the voice of the Lord? And now do you desire to live upon earth?" And so Noah's saying it's not going to happen now. It's too late. And so these people were idolaters, but notice they were not atheists. An atheist, see, there's really no such thing as an atheist, because every atheist has an idol that they worship. They're an idolater somewhere. They believe in something. And so all these people here, well, they didn't believe what God said. They knew God had said it. They didn't believe him because they were idolaters, but they were not atheists. And so they believed that God Almighty ceased to exist, or at least was greatly diminished, and would soon disappear for all eternity. And that's called the doctrine of emanation. Now, the doctrine of emanation is a teaching found in occult practices today and in esoteric writings. Okay? It reworks the Eastern concepts of karma. Everyone's heard of karma. If you do something, then it'll come back on you. That's basically what karma is, right? And so the doctrine of emanation reworks the Eastern concepts of karma and reincarnation. And by the way, both go together. You cannot separate karma from reincarnation, actually. And so this provides an evolutionary theory of both humankind and the universe. Occultists teach this doctrine with the Kabbalah and Gnosticism. And the female goddess of Kabbalah, do you know who the female goddess is? She's called Shekinah. You ever heard of the Shekinah glory? Garbage. Okay, she's a goddess is what she is. So when preachers, and I know I've heard it from IFB people, preachers, talk about the Shekinah glory of God. That's actually a female goddess. And so whether I know they love the Lord, and it sounds good, but that's what it is. Now, God's name in Kabbalah is Yahweh. So Yahweh, remember, is a desert pagan god. So that's your Kabbalah and their religion, along with Gnosticism. Number 4, the fourth point on this, on pre-flood paganism, is salvation is not needed. So any kind of salvation would be done by one's own strength. And that's what they believe. All will make it to godhood on their own. Obviously, Satan believed this. He tried to get Eve, tempted her with this. All will make it to Godhead on their own. Eventually, to speed up the process, though, man would need to turn to magic and the dark arts and able to help it along. Number 5, observed omens in the sun and moon. And number 6 goes along with this, and charted the movement of the sun and moon through the zodiac. Now, the zodiac was not known about before the flood and came about after the flood by Nimrod and the Babylonian Chaldeans, okay? They're the ones that came up with the zodiac. And so now, Numbers 5 and 6, again, number 5 was observed omens in the sun and moon. And number 6 was charting the movement of the sun and moon through the zodiac. These 2 points are that they used a form of astrology that centered on predicting omens like eclipses in the sun and moon and charted their courses through the zodiac or through the stars. Now, this was practiced to summon magic energies for rituals and to contact their ancestor gods, once again, at the appropriate times. There's different times to contact them. And so, now the book of Jubilees mentions an interesting thing on this. It says, in the 29th Jubilee, in the first week, in the beginning thereof, Arphaxad took to himself, and it talks about Arphaxad Shem. But then it talks about Canaan here. And Canaan grew, and his father taught him writing, which would be Ham. And he went to seek for himself a place where he might seize for himself a city. Now we know what happens when you go to seek a city. And he found a writing which former generations had carved on a rock. So former generations would take you back to pre-flood. Okay? And he read what was thereon, and he transcribed it and sinned owing to it. For it contained the teaching of the watchers, in accordance, watchers are the fallen angels, in accordance with which they used to observe the omens of the sun and moon and stars in all the signs of heaven. And he wrote it down and said nothing regarding it, for he was afraid to speak to Noah about it, lest he should be angry with him on account of it. So, Canaan, son of Ham, finds all this. Now you can see where that's going. He found the writings which were written on tablets of stone or rock or whatever, and he's transcribing these things. And lo and behold, the Canaanites are nothing but giants. And so you can understand where that will go from there. And so, yeah, pretty much, yeah. That's right. All right, number 7, no horoscopes. And so the pre-flood astrology did not have the idea of a horoscope. That also came later. The horoscope actually was invented after the flood, of course, by Nimrod and the Chaldeans. And actually was found by Canaan. Canaan shared that along with Nimrod. Nimrod was the son of Cush, Ham's oldest son. Okay? And so another name for Cush, by the way, is Baal. Okay? Which if you think about it, if Baal was another name for Cush, Baal was the sun god. And you can see how that ancestor worship starts then. And so, anyway. So in the pre-flood version, astrology was only used to predict the next scheduled date for magic rites and the next time one would contact a god or a goddess ancestor. And so Hippolytus, one of the church fathers, said the horoscopes was invented by the Chaldean astrologers. In the days of Daniel, it talks about the Chaldeans and the daily prognosticators and those soothsayers and stuff. And so the Chaldean astrologers were the ones that invented the horoscopes. And you realize how many people go after that stuff. And they believe the horoscopes or the zodiac and stuff. That's all demonic stuff. You need to leave. I hope no one's into that stuff here. But if you get into that stuff, you need to leave it alone. You could be opening yourself up to devils. And so, number 8 is invented by demons, inventions of demons. All right, the magic system, including astrology, was the invention of demons, fallen angels, devils. Tatian says, writing to the Greeks, in one of his writings, he says, and I quote, "Demons invented the concept of fate with astrology to enslave man into worshiping them." And so watch out talking about, oh, that's just fate. See, fate with astrology, they go together. And then number 9, the ritual use of blood. Now, we know that blood is used a lot in the Bible. It's to take care of our sin and everything, but it's also used in, and I'm not talking about sacrifice of animals, but sacrifice of blood. In other words, you're cutting yourself and you're giving blood to something. And that's what it's, blood sacrifices. Yes. And in fact, go ahead and turn there, 1 Kings chapter 18. Yeah, because that was the first place that I thought of too, was 1 Kings 18. But blood sacrifices, magic, demonology, and ritual drinking of blood was used by the Canaanites after the flood as well as before the flood. That's why God had to tell Noah, no longer partake of the blood with the meat and everything. Don't partake of it, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. But the pagans, the ancient pagans, used it. The use of blood was also part of the religion before the flood also. All animal sacrifices involve blood, but they're always referred to as animal sacrifices. When a ritual called for a blood sacrifice instead of an animal sacrifice, we know it means that blood is being spilt somewhere. The blood is what is needed, not the animal. Now, 1 Kings 18, look at verse 26. 1 Kings 18, verse 26. "And they took the bullock which was given them, and they dressed it, and called on the name of Baal from morning even until noon, saying, O Baal, hear us. But there was no voice, nor any that answered, and they leaped upon the altar which was made. And it came to pass at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is talking, or he is pursuing, or he's in a journey, or peradventure he sleepeth and must be waked." So he's mocking them. "And they cried aloud and cut themselves after their manner with knives and lancets till the blood gushed out upon them." So to them, the animal sacrifice wasn't enough. They had to give blood. Yes. And this is the manner. So obviously you know that this is one of the things that they carried on even after the flood, was the use of a blood sacrifice. And so, yeah, like he pointed out, this was their manner. That means that this is what they did all the time in their sacrifices. And so they're making a blood sacrifice here, and they're using their own blood. They're sacrificing their own blood. And so Clement says in the 14th generation, one of the cursed progeny, one of the descendants of Canaan, in other words, first erected an altar to demons for the purpose of magical arts and offered their blood sacrifices. See, so it had nothing to do with animals. And God knew this false religion would return after the flood, so that's why he commanded Noah to ensure his children would not consume blood when eating meat. Genesis chapter 9, verses 3 and 4. Number 10, evolution and reincarnation. Now, I'm not writing these down on here because it's too much to write down. It would take too long. So if you need any of these points, if you're taking notes, I can give them to you later. But it's evolution or reincarnation. Now, all pagan religions, now get this, all pagan religions teach reincarnation with evolution. You cannot have one without the other. A pagan religion cannot have one without the other. Reincarnation is the belief that the soul or spirit, after biological death, begins a new life in a new body that may be human, animal, or even vegetable, or spiritual, depending on the moral quality of the previous life's action. In other words, if you were mean to others, you may come back as a bug so someone can step all over you like you did when you were a human. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you're a narcissist, you might get abused and even killed later in a next life, all right? But that's basically what they believe. Now, the purpose of reincarnation is said to be soul development and spiritual growth. The whole purpose of reincarnation is to, okay, you made some mistakes in this life, so you've got another chance to improve and become a better version of you. It's just basically humanism. That's all it is. And so it involves the soul returning to the physical realm many times to learn new things and work through karma. See how that's all intertwined there. Now, the symbol of reincarnation is the phoenix. Okay? The phoenix is a legendary bird that holds great significance in many cultures. The phoenix symbolizes rebirth, resurrection, and transformation through its ability to emerge anew from its own ashes. People engage in yoga, meditation, or energy healing to attempt to connect to a past life. Now think about this. Now I've actually, my dad used to have a book by Frank Edwards, and a Stranger Than Fiction, or there was a bunch in his series of books that he had. And in one of them, there was a little girl, probably 9, 10, or 11, and this, I remember him telling this story that this grown man came in, and he had lost his wife, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or something, in a car accident or something. This little girl, probably 10 or 11, recognized him and said, "He was my husband before." Now, how do you explain something like that? And it's demons. And so, now, what it does is, if you open yourself up with yoga and meditation and trying to clear your mind, you'll open up a doorway for the devil to place memories in your mind that's not yours. You think devil can't do that? He can. They still do that. Yes. Nope. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yep. Yep. So, I mean, it's really demonic. So reincarnation is a form of evolution, because supposedly with each life you should be evolving into a better person or animal and making better choices. Now, Christians and Jews teach creation along with resurrection. These two cannot be separated either. You can't separate creation and resurrection. If you can prove evolution will be part of the Roman Church, then you'll know reincarnation will be also. Now look at Revelation chapter 17. Revelation 17. Now these were pagan, pre-flood parts of their religion. But notice that they're also, a lot of them are ties to stuff that's going on today. So it's happened even after the flood. Revelation 17, look at verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color. And if you look at all the gold and precious stones and pearls and all the colors, it matches the Roman Catholic to the T. Let's see, purple and scarlet color, decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now look at 2 Peter chapter 3. Now it also says in chapter 18 of Revelation that they traffic in the souls of men. 2 Peter chapter 3, look at verse 3. Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days of 2 Peter 3, verse 3, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. Okay, now notice that. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. Okay, so that world perished there. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word are kept in store, by the same word, in other words, by the word of God, are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. Now, Revelation shows that the end-time church becomes part of Mystery Babylon's religious system. Peter's prophecy here states that it begins by the church rejecting creation and Noah's flood in favor of evolution. And by the way, this is taking place in many denominations now. They reject creation, and they're rejecting the resurrection. Number 11, the 11th point, is evolution without karma. The belief that every person was evolving into a higher life form, ye shall be as gods knowing good and evil. Okay, that's what this is. After the flood, paganism added the doctrine of transmigration of souls, which means if your lifestyle is very bad, you may de-evolve or come back as a lower form of life. So it's kind of the opposite of reincarnation. And reincarnation is coming back to go and do better things. But see, after the flood, they added this transmigration of souls, which means that you're de-evolving. But this was not part of pre-flood paganism, but was added after the flood. If you believe in this, if people believe in this devilish doctrine, you talk about doctrines of devils, then people that believe this believe that there's no hell. They have to believe that there's no hell. And that we're just okay. We're doing okay. That's what they believe. Number 12, ghosts, demons, and nature spirits. Okay? Nature spirits were thought to be the life force in all creation. That's what pagans believed. This is connected to pantheism and Taoism. There's a force there. Okay, that connects. That, in fact, if you know anything about Star Wars, those metachlorines can create life. Right? And by the way, they're redefining it in the Acolyte. They're redefining that. The new series they have on Disney. So nature spirits, the life force in all creation. And so it's connected to pantheism and Taoism. If at death our spirits could evolve into a god, then the worship of demons and ghosts would be prominent. Remember, Paul said that to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. That disproves reincarnation. That disproves this teaching on nature spirits. See, the devil wants to destroy everything that God believes and what God says and the way it actually really is. And give you some hope that you can come back in the next life. So go ahead and live how you want to live, they teach. Do you, they say. And just live how you want to, because you can come back and do it over later if you mess something up. No, you can't. It's done. Tertullian said, "Ye who serve stones, and ye who make images of gold and silver and wood and stones and clay, and serve phantoms and demons and spirits." And basically phantoms are nothing more than ghosts. But see, they even mentioned it then. And then number 13, the last one, is sodomite marriages. Pre-flood paganism. There has always been sodomy. God created man and woman, husband and wife, and Satan has been bent on perverting marriage since Adam and Eve were created. And so, sodomy has always been sin. And it has always been sin. It will always be sin. The Canaanites practiced sodomite rituals and the worship of their gods and goddesses. The ancient rabbis state that sodomite marriages were sanctioned right before Noah's flood. In fact, they believed this may have been part of the pre-flood religion or a direct result of it. In Romans chapter 1, if you go read chapter 1, verses 22 through 28, Paul indicates that idolatry produces immorality, and sodomy and bestiality and all the other heinous sins. Okay? But idolatry comes first. And together, idolatry and immorality will cause the final apostasy, according to Romans chapter 1, verses 22 through 28. That, in turn, will result in extreme forms of sodomy and bestiality, which will cause God to renovate or destroy the earth. He'll destroy it all. The ancient rabbis seemed to believe this also. They stated that the practice of ordaining sodomite marriages was the last step in the downward spiral that will cause God's judgment. Rabbi Huna said in the name of Rabbi Joseph, quote, "The generation of the flood was not wiped out until they wrote marriage documents for the union of a man to a male or to an animal." That's before the flood. They're already doing that. As in the days of Noah, so shall it also be in the coming of the Son of Man. And so, now the marriage documents for your animals is the next thing on the list. That's just the next thing. They are, yeah. Yep. And in parts of California, too. Mm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. 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 And so that's the next thing where they'll be able to marry him. Rabbi Haya taught. Now turn to Leviticus 18 real quick before I read that passage, because he has a commentary, Rabbi Haya. I don't own it. I saw this phrase here that he quotes, and it's a commentary on Leviticus 18. Now look at verse 3. Leviticus 18 verse 3. After the doings of the land of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do. And after the doings of the land of Canaan, whither I bring you, shall ye not do. Neither shall ye walk in their ordinances. Okay, so the land of Egypt, what was going on in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan are the same stuff, obviously. And then if you continue to read, he talks about, thou shalt not go into thy father's wife and uncover the nakedness, and it goes into all of that throughout the rest of the chapter. Now, Rabbi Haya taught that the passage reads, I am the Lord your God, twice. Verse 2 says, speaking to the children of Israel, saying to them, I am the Lord your God. And then verse 4, ye shall do my judgments, keep mine ordinances to walk therein. I am the Lord your God. He says that he mentions that twice. And so the first time, I'm the one who punishes the generation of the flood. He says it has to do with the, it doesn't show that here, but in the Bible, but his commentary says that what God is saying here is that I am the one who punished the generation of the flood and the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and Egypt. And in the future, I will punish those who do as they did. And so the generations of the flood were kings and were wiped off the earth when they were soaked in sexual sin. And what did they do? Now this is him still going on with his commentary. A man got married to a man, a woman to a woman. A man married a woman and her daughter. Okay, that's chapter 18, verse 18 talks about that. Taking a daughter and the mother. So that's, no, that's polygamous too. Okay? And he goes on, and a woman was married to two men. I haven't seen that one yet. There's probably some that are, I don't know. Therefore, he goes on, therefore it is said, and ye shall not walk in their statutes. That's what it says there. And so this comes from a Jewish commentary on Leviticus 18 by an ancient Jewish church father. Church fathers Clement of Alexandria and Tatian tells us that the Romans and barbarians considered sodomy and pederasty crimes punishable by death. And in the first century, however, both were practiced widely by the Romans. So how is it that the Romans and barbarians would kill anybody that has to do with sodomy when they practice that in their culture anyway? So I don't know. When all this came about and Noah and his family were the only ones left still faithful to God, God instructed Noah to build an ark, and the world was then destroyed by a flood of waters. Genesis chapter 6 verse 12 and 13 says, all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth. These 13 points give the following picture for pre-flood paganism. Now, the original creator or force, that's what they say, emptied himself. Now, we're going to summarize all of it, okay, and then we'll be done. The original creator and force emptied himself into creation. The spirit and life exists in everything, which is called pantheism. There's no need for salvation because everyone will eventually evolve into a god. Now, this is their teaching, okay? Ancient paganism. Contacting your ancestors who have already ascended and using magic are shortcuts to to obtaining godhood. Using astrology to calculate the proper times for magic rituals and speaking to dead relatives speeds up the process of evolution of godhood. One cannot de-evolve compared to Hinduism's doctrine of karma. Contacting the nature spirits may also help in the evolution process. Magic rites, including blood rituals and offering of blood. And so now, later on, we'll go on and examine the Canaanite occultic practices individually to add to these 13 things. Okay? Any comments?